Bienvenue pour cette nouvelle soirée GDG. J'ai pas préparé de slide ce soir, parce que avec le DevFest et tout, on était bien occupés. Actualité du GDG, pas grand chose pour l'instant. On va essayer de faire d'ici la fin de l'année un autre speechless encore. On est en train de réfléchir aux dates, on va publier ça assez rapidement. Et sinon, pour ceux qui étaient au DevFest, je ne sais pas si vous avez vu, les vidéos sont publiées. Ça y est, vous allez pouvoir passer un week-end sous la couette bien sympathique. Et si pareil, vous étiez au DevFest, n'hésitez pas à nous donner vos feedbacks, s'il vous plaît, parce qu'on en a besoin. Ils sont sur Twitter. Et dernière chose, en fait, non, je ne vais pas dire grand-chose de plus. Je vais laisser Lorraine parler. Et pour rappel, ça va être en anglais. Merci Lorraine, on l'applaudit bien fort.
Thank you. I'm really excited to be here. My name is Lauren, and I work in the San Francisco office of Google. I work on the Firebase team as an engineer. And I just came from Prague, where we had our 3rd annual Firebase Summit. And that's the big annual conference where we make a lot of new announcements about products. So today, in my presentation, I'll talk about some of these announcements that were made. And there's Q&A afterwards as well. If you have any questions, I can answer them. Sorry. No, that's okay. I'll just... Okay, no worries. It works on... Okay, yeah, no, that's good, Okay. Thank you. So who here has used Firebase before? Okay, great, a lot of you have used Firebase, that's really great. So Firebase, as you know, is a platform of different products that help you develop your web and mobile apps. So there's 3 main categories for these products. The first one is ones that help you build better apps. So these are what we call backend as a service. They help you to make an app without running your own servers. And then we have our products that help you improve your app's quality. So help you to see what might be making it not perform well and then help it to perform better. And then lastly, we have apps that help you grow your user base, products that help you grow your user base. So these are things that give you statistics on how your users are using your app, gives you sometimes predictions about how they'll act in the future, and allow you to test different things and grow your user base and make more money with your app. So the features I'm going to talk about today are 2 categories. So the ones that are labeled with hot means it was just announced in Prague this Monday. And the ones that are labeled new are ones that were launched in the last few weeks. So let's first look at the announcements that are related to the products that help you build your app. So first I want to talk about Cloud Firestore. This is a database that you can use in your app that is real-time. It is hosted by Google. So that means if you are building something where you want to change your UI based on what's happening, Firestore allows you to do it very quickly without you keep having to make requests back and forth. You can attach listeners, and when data changes, you'll get that in your callback and be able to change things in your UI. So it's a great database to use. It also has rich querying capabilities as well. So the thing that we announced at this Firebase Summit is the rules simulator. So because the Firestore SDK is client-side, sometimes there might be security issues of who can access your database. That's why you want to write rules that allow you to dictate which user can access what part of the database, so then people only access data that they should have access to. And before now, it was really hard to test these rules, and now we have in the Firebase console a way for you to test the rules that you're developing. The next thing that we launched is querying capability and filtering within the Firebase console. So if you had a really big database with lots of users, lots of information, before it was hard to look up something, now you can do it through filtering and through querying within the console itself. We also launched new deployment regions. So previously, Firestore can only be deployed to central US. Now it can be deployed to Europe as well as eastern US. So that makes the data closer to your user, which will make your app faster. And lastly, we now support importing and exporting from Firestore into Google Cloud Storage. So this is really useful if you want to replicate the data in one app into another app. You don't have to do everything from scratch. Or if you want to have different environments you're testing against, or to bootstrap new projects, this is a really useful thing to do. So next, Cloud Functions. We've made a number of improvements as well. So Cloud Functions for Firebase is the product that I actually work on, and I've been working on it for the last 2.5 years. So if you have questions afterwards, I'm happy to answer them. If you don't know what Cloud Functions is a way to write custom backend code that's hosted on Google servers that responds to events happening in your app. So it could be a new change in the database, or a new file being uploaded, or a new user signed up. It'll trigger your function to run, which runs your custom code, and then you're only paying for when the function's running, and when it's not running, you don't pay for that. So the launches we did recently was we just launched general availability for Node 6. So it's no longer in beta, it's production ready. And we also launched support for Node 8 in beta. And just at FireConf, we launched integration with Firebase Remote Config, where you can trigger functions with Remote Config. And I'll talk about this a little later. Next, Firebase Hosting is another backend product that we offer. This is a really quick way to host websites. So we offer a secure global web hosting CDN that is very good at quickly delivering static content like HTML, CSS, or JavaScript to your users. And it's also very easy to get to start using. You can either use a domain that we provide or come with your own domain, and we can link your project to your own domain. And previously, if you have multiple websites, maybe one for your user, one for your employees, and one for a different set of users, and you want them to share the same resources, it was really hard to do because each website had to be on a different Firebase project. But now you can have multiple websites in one Firebase project. So you can have all of these websites share the same database, share the same storage buckets, share the same user base. Something else that we announced is Delta uploads. So before, when you were deploying hosting and you had a lot of files because your website was very big, it could take a long time because each of your files is getting uploaded. But now the Firebase CLI only uploads the files that you've changed or new files that you wrote. So that means before it might take some time, now it'll be very quick for you to update your website. A really exciting announcement that we just made is we can now allow you to deploy directly from StackBlitz or Glitch. Does anybody here use StackBlitz or Glitch? Okay, great, some people. So it's an IDE within the web browser. So you can stay within your web browser. It's almost like you have VS Code or IntelliJ or Sublime open. And right now, and now you can just deploy to Firebase with a button, and you can see the website in action. So that's pretty quick, pretty cool. In order to make that happen, we had to build a new API called the Hosting REST API. So this allows you to programmatically deploy new sites and update your deployments. So this is really useful if you work in a big team where you want to automate some of the deployment. You can now do that and integrate Firebase deployment into your own tools. We also have MLKit, which is a way to use machine learning inside mobile apps. So some of the features that we have is you can recognize text. So if a user is taking a photo, you can see the text that's in the photo. It can recognize barcodes, label images. So if you have a picture of a computer, the MLKit will tell your app that this is a computer. You can do landmark recognition, facial recognition, and even train your own custom TensorFlow models that run on device. And recently we just added a new feature, which is facial contours. So if you take a photo of someone's face, it can now recognize eyes, nose, mouth, etc. So if you've ever used Google Hangout before, where you can put glasses on someone that you're video chatting with, or a mustache, Snapchat can do this as well. With some, maybe you can put some ears on somebody. You can now do that in your apps because you now know where all the facial features are. So the Firebase CLI, I'm going to talk about it briefly. It's a tool that's used across Firebase products, and it allows you to build as well as deploy many of the Firebase products. And the new things that we launched for the Firebase CLI is you can now locally test your real-time database and your Cloud Firestore, especially the security rules. So this is really useful because you can write integration tests or unit tests that go through your security rules to make sure when you update them, you're not making any regressions. So that was all in the build category of products. I will now talk about what's in the app quality category. So this is the category of apps that will help you to monitor how your app is doing, as well as how you can improve them. So the first product that we offer in that category is Test Lab. Firebase Test Lab allows you to test your app on many different kinds of iPhones and Android phones. So sometimes your app might work properly on one model but not the other. Instead of having to buy all of those phones and test it manually, which would cost a lot of time and money, you can just upload your APK or your bundle, and it'll run your app on different physical devices that runs in Google's data centers. So there's actually racks full of phones that will just run your app. And you'll get a report of what crashed. You'll even get screenshots of what went wrong. And the exciting thing that we announced here is we now fully support iOS. So iOS is now in GA, is no longer beta. So if you're developing for iOS, this is something that you can take advantage of. Next, Firebase Crashlytics is a tool that helps you identify and diagnose crashes that happen in your app. So this is once you've already put the app on the App Store or Google Play, and you want to know when an app is actually crashing on your user's device. You can now export data from Crashlytics into BigQuery. So BigQuery is another Google product. It's very good at handling lots and lots of data and making analysis of it. So now you can analyze your crash data to better understand it, and you can also make reports for your team. Another integration we had was you can now create Jira tickets based on crashes that happen. So Jira, if you haven't used it before, is used in a lot of agile development teams to track bugs and issues and assign work to different people. So now a crash can automatically create a Jira ticket, and that can be assigned to someone on the team. We also launched a PagerDuty extension. So now a crash can make a pager make a pager page. So if you want to immediately respond to your crashes, this is a great way to make sure team members that are responsible are notified when they happen. Another product that we have is called Firebase Performance. So this is a way for you to monitor different performance metrics in your app, like how long it takes to load, or how long it takes to do certain things and for a certain page to come up. And this is a great way for you to just keep tabs on how your app is doing, make sure your users are actually having a good experience. And until recently, with Firebase Performance, you can only get aggregate data. So you can get data for all of your users at the same time. But it was not possible to drill into one particular user. Now you can do it with session analysis. So you can now drill into a particular user's journey. It's anonymous, so you don't know who they are, but you know that for this one user, this is their loading time, for example. And this is just helpful for you to better understand what each person is actually going through. You can now manage different issues. So if your app has a lot of different things that might be going wrong and you have a lot of issues on your dashboard, maybe some of them are issues that you're already taking action on and working on, and you don't want to keep getting reminded of them. You can now mute certain issues or close them after you fix them. So this is a great way for you to make sure the dashboard is actually useful to you and not just overwhelming with information you're not using. So we've talked about products that help you build your app, products that help you make your app perform better. Now I want to talk about products that help you grow your app. So the most important product that we have here is called Google Analytics for Firebase. So this is really at the core of a lot of things that we do because it allows us to analyze what's happening in your app. So you can track different things. For example, people that uninstall the app or install the app. You can also have custom events that you're tracking. So if you've used Google Analytics on a website before, this is very similar, but optimized for mobile apps. One thing that analytics makes use of is audiences. So you can define an audience by saying, whenever someone does this, have them enter into this audience. And then you can use these audiences to target messages with some of the other products that we offer. But until now, someone can enter into an audience and they never leave. So that wasn't very good because maybe their behavior changed and you don't want to keep targeting them with the same campaigns. But now we have dynamic audiences, which means people can enter into an audience as well as leave it. And you define what criteria is being used to evaluate when someone should leave an audience. One thing that works really well with Google Analytics for Firebase is another product called Firebase Remote Config. So this is a way for your apps to get updates without you having to publish a new version to the App Store. So this is really useful for making updates as well as for just testing out different things in your app. And now we have change history. So you can see a list of who on your team have changed config values, when they changed it, and also revert back to previous versions. We've also integrated with call functions, which I mentioned briefly before. This means that whenever there's a change to a remote configuration, you can define a cloud function that will run in response, and in your function you can decide to do anything with that information. We also have in-console JSON validation. So a lot of people like to use JSON in remote config if you're doing something more complicated than just a simple value. And previously, because you had to use the Firebase console to write JSON, you may be making mistakes in your JSON. That'll just make it not work. And that was really hard to detect. So we now have within the Firebase console a way for you to edit JSON and validate that is correct before you publish it. Next, we have Firebase A/B testing, and this is similar to remote config, but is especially good for when you're testing out a feature. You want to show some of your users it one way and some of your other users another way. So this could be testing out the color of something or a text that's on a button, and you can set up experiments and also measure how effective they are. And now you have a real-time experiment user count. So this helps you to know that your experiments are running and that they are actually configured properly and running correctly. And you can also collect useful information about your users, like who is on that experiment right now. Firebase Cloud Messaging is one of our most popular products. It allows you to send notifications to your users. So if you see push notifications on Android, most of those are probably sent through Firebase Cloud Messaging. We're the #1 product for sending that. We also support iOS, and we support both messages that your user sees as well as just data messages for your app. So if you want your client app to respond to something, you can just send them a data message, and your user doesn't see it as a push notification, but you can change your app in your client code in response. So some of the things we launched is we now have long-running campaigns. So previously there was a way to publish a marketing campaign in the Firebase console, but it sends it to everybody at the same time and just once. Now you can have a long-running campaign that will keep going, and you can schedule it to run on certain intervals. You can also target users better now based on certain characteristics. For example, when they last opened your app, you can send different messages according to when they did that. You can also track the long-running campaigns and see their results daily. And something like this. So this is a notifications report, and it gives you really good insights into how many people got the message, how many people opened it, how many people clicked through to it. We have a new product now for sending messages. So FCM has been around for a very long time. It's very robust, very useful. But the one thing it didn't do very well was, although it's possible to send a message in the middle of your app, it was a little hard to make that look very good. So now with Firebase in-app messaging, which was launched in August, you can do messages like this that pop over your app with pictures and text that's really engaging. And this is really useful for nudging your users towards a certain action. So for example, say you have a game and someone just earned some extra points, you can now have an extra message that says, with these new points, you can purchase these upgrades. So you can send information to users at a very relevant time. If you're interested in Firebase in-app messaging and Firebase Cloud Messaging, I actually gave a talk at Firebase Summit in Prague called Engage Your Users with Targeted Notifications, where we actually do a lot of demos with these products, so you can find on YouTube if you're interested in learning more. Firebase Predictions is a relatively new product, and it uses machine learning to predict what your users will do. So some of the things it can predict is which users will churn, so which ones will uninstall your app, which ones will make it a purchase. And that's really useful information because while analytics allows you to look in the past, this allows you to look in the future. So now we also have Predictions Health Indicator, and this gives you an idea of how good the predictions are. So you can see the health of each prediction, how many of those predictions actually came true. You can also see what went into each prediction, so how the prediction was made. And we got feedback that a lot of users wanted to know about this, so now you can have that extra insight. And lastly, you can also export to BigQuery the predictions data that you have. And with that, you can create reports and analyze it in order to gain more insight into your users. And the most exciting thing, I think, is you can now use predictions along with some of our other products. So for example, you can have campaigns with Firebase Cloud Messaging that run based on predictions. So you only send a push notification to users if you predict that they will do a certain thing. You can also use predictions with Firebase in-app messaging in a very similar way. And lastly, you can also perform experiments with Firebase A/B testing or Firebase remote config, where you show the users that are predicted to churn or predicted to purchase a certain thing, and other users something else. So that was a lot of information. Thank you all for listening, and if you're interested in learning more, here's some great resources. So if you want, you can take a photo of this. This has our website, our GitHub repository. Firebase in a Weekend is a Udacity course that you take that walks you through the basics of how to use Firebase, and you can do it in a weekend. We also have a YouTube channel where we do a lot of tutorial videos, a lot of almost every talk that we have at conferences is uploaded on our YouTube channel. And we have a Slack channel as well if you want to directly interact with the team and ask questions. Yeah, thank you so much for listening. So I'll now answer any questions that you might have.
I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
You talk about the issues that are reported directly on Jira.
Mm-hmm.
Will there be the same thing for GitHub?
Oh, that's a great idea. So there isn't currently, but you can easily do that yourself. So remote Crashlytics integrates with Cloud Functions. So when there's a crash or a new issue, you can trigger a function, and then you can just use the GitHub web hook in order to publish an issue. So you can do that yourself.
Another question about the face recognition. I'm just curious about if you are using the same web native API just launched last year in Chrome, which is a face recognition based on the Shape API.
Oh, it might be very similar. I think it's very similar under the hood.
It works for all the devices? It works for iOS too?
MLKit is for iOS and Android.
Okay.
It's not for web.
Okay.
But I think the underlying model is probably the same as that one.
MLKit is not usable for the web?
Not for web. MLKit is only for mobile.
Okay. Vous n'êtes pas curieux?
To keep going on MLKit, there is many features only available for Android and iOS. Why not web? Is it why?
Yeah, good question. So we might support web in the future, but we decided to do iOS and Android first because those are harder to do. So we have Google's machine learning APIs, they're REST APIs. So for a web developer, they're very easy to use because within the website, you can just make an API call to these APIs. Whereas on mobile, you're handling a lot of offline situations, and there's also a lot more restraint on bandwidth and battery. So that's why we created MLKit to make it easier for mobile developers. Whereas for web, there's already a lot of other solutions that are very good that are offered by Google and other people. But I think eventually we'll probably also support web. I just don't know when. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. We'll go to take a drink. So we'll go downstairs. So she will be there to answer to your private question because it seems that you only have private questions. Thank you.
Thank you.